video right here on Pub Sports Radio. It's Ian Cameron and Conor Mac. You know us well. You hopefully love us as well. We continue on with the college football betting preview videos. If you missed it, we already did ACC. We already did Big Ten yesterday. So make sure you check out those videos if you haven't already. We're now turning our attention to the Big 12 and fascinating conference. We were talking off air, Connor and I. It's been called the Big 12 for years still. They haven't changed the name yet. It's been down to 10 teams now in this conference for the last several years. And as far as the conference odds go to win the Big 12, we've got Oklahoma favored, not a shock, around minus 125, minus 150 in most spots. Then your second favorite is Iowa State, plus 375, Texas 12-1, TCU 20-1, Oklahoma State 25-1, West Virginia 50-1, Baylor 80-1, Kansas State 80-1, Texas Tech 100-1, and then a precipitous drop till we get to the clear bottom feeder of the Big 12, as they've been for like the last 20 years, Kansas at 2,000-1 to win the Big 12. So if you really want to burn your money, you can take a little flyer with the Jayhawks this year to win the Big 12. But let's get to it. We go in alphabetical order with each team. Once again, we will start with the Baylor Bears. It is year number 2 for Dave Aranda as the head coach of this Baylor program. Remember, he comes over from LSU. He was the defensive coordinator there for that marvelous championship team of 2019. And now he's in his second year at Baylor. Their win total 5.5. I'd like the hire of Dave Aranda for sure with this Baylor team. But when you look at Baylor coming into this year, still a lot of question marks galore with this team coming into the year. Last year was a big struggle for the Bears. Things really didn't gel. A lot of issues with COVID as well. Yeah. After last year, they got hit hard pretty much by it. And now when you look at Baylor, they have to bring in a new quarterback. Charlie Brewer is gone, is transferred to Utah. And we will get to them, obviously, with the Pac-12. But Jacob Zeno, we'll see how he fares here in this offense. It's an untested group of quarterbacks, so we'll see how they fare. The offense really had a hard time last year moving the football, and that was with a guy that's been around as quarterback for a few years. So you do get concerned about where this offense is going to be coming into this 2021 season. The defensive side of the football for Baylor, they do have 10 starters back. I think that has the potential to be the strength. And it could be actually one of the better defenses in the conference, Connor, considering the Big 12 is always a conference you have questions about who's exactly going to step up and play some defense. Baylor might be able to do that this year, but they have real issues at the quarterback spot. Their offensive line, a little bit of a change and turnover from last year, really, really shaky group. They don't have a ton of returning experience overall. They're only ranked 78th, out of 130 FBS teams in terms of returning production coming into this year. As far as their schedule goes, we talked about the win total being 5.5. They're only favored this year in 6 games. So in theory, they could hit the over here. Texas State, Texas Southern, Kansas should be victories, should be a 3-0 start for Baylor. The BYU game, that's a coin flip. Might be tough there. Kansas State on the road's not going to be easy. It's never easy to win in Manhattan, and I think K-State could be a little bit better this year. And then Texas Tech, that's a game that's probably up in the air and not a given that Baylor would win that. The other games, they're going to be tough, right? Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Texas, TCU, Oklahoma. They're going to be tough in those ones. I think the win total's right around where it should be, 5.5, 6. It is 6 at some spots. At 6, I would look under. Yeah. At 5.5, I would lean over because I think they could get to 6, but I don't have a strong opinion. I won't be betting the win total for Baylor. Let's put it that way. I still think they're going to be a bet against team. I think there's other teams in this conference, we'll get to them, that I like a little bit more than Baylor coming into the year. Even though I like that defense, it'll be good. I think the offense will be question marks under the total in terms of their game totals. That is definitely something I would be looking to bet with Baylor. I mean, we don't usually love unders in the Big 12 for obvious reasons, but I think Baylor could be involved in some lower scoring football games this year. The defense clearly looks way ahead of the offense coming into this year. And keep in mind, they have a defensive-minded head coach as well in Dave Aranda. Conor Mac, what are your thoughts here on the Baylor Bears?
Yeah, we'll see if their defense will kind of reflect, because you talk about all that high-scoring offense in the Big 12 here. All these teams love to light it up. Oklahoma on down, but not all of them. We have some good defenses. Iowa State, there's a few, but for the most part, there's not a lot of defense going around the last few years or so. Aranda, that was last year was tough. The COVID was just ravaged them after that great year before. You mentioned it, Brewer, he's gone. And he wasn't very good last year. I think he was ready to get out of town. You know, COVID hit him. They went 2-7. They were really rough. And I was on him a few games early, and I had to get off the train because they were not good. Like you said, they bring back some defense. I think it's going to be the offense is the question mark. I think they have. You mentioned the schedule. Texas State, Texas Southern, Kansas, and they can get one more. I like the under. If you get a 6, I think the under is the way to go. I think it'd be a fight for them to get 6-6. I see it more of as a 4-win team here. And I think it's just going to be another growing year here for them. We'll see. They got new offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes. I wrote that down. Maybe they got to do something because there's a whole lot of like a blank canvas there for the offense. So I lean under on their win total.
Yeah, I mean, because I think they're a bet against team, I sure as hell wouldn't be looking to bet it over their win total.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what happens with Jeff Grimes. That's a good point you make in terms of how he's going to fare as the offensive coordinator. He's been around the block for sure. Talking about a guy that, at BYU and to see how he does here. Look, great things there at BYU, but you're not getting, you don't have a Zach Wilson ready to rock here on this roster necessarily. So let's see what you've got. Jake, by the way, Zeno hasn't won the quarterback job. He's listed as the likely starting quarterback in week 1, but Jerry Bohannon is still in the mix here in this August camp for Baylor. So this is going to be one of those situations where, look, the quarterback position's up in the air. There's a big uncertainty with it. It wouldn't surprise me to see Aranda take this decision right down to just days before the first game, before he decides who his starter is going to be. It doesn't look like there's a great deal of separation between the kids that are battling for this job right now for Baylor. Next up, we've got Iowa State, the Cyclones, and one of my favorite programs in this conference and one of my favorite coaches, because Matt Campbell, the job he's done, do you know how freaking difficult it is to win in Ames, Iowa with this program, and what he has been able to do with the Iowa State Cyclones is remarkable. It's magnificent coaching. It's been unbelievable recruiting, considering, again, difficult to say, hey, let's play at Iowa State to a lot of these kids, when you're trying to go out on the recruiting trail and trying to bring, 3, 4, 5-star talent in there. But the recruiting rankings have been more than held their own for a place like Iowa State. And that's all credit to Matt Campbell. Last year, maybe the best Iowa State team ever. I think you could make that case, and I think they could be every bit as good this year. 11 of the 12 games, Connor, they're going to be favored this year. The only game they're not going to be favored in is the game at Oklahoma. They will be obviously an underdog there, but they are going to be favored every other game on their schedule. There's a lot to like. I like this coach a lot. The only question is going to be, is there still going to be that point spread value this year with Iowa State? You already see the battle, the Cy-Hawk battle against Iowa Saturday, September 11th, and they're already a significant favorite in that game, Iowa State. So the question is going to be, are you going to get point spread value? It's not a secret anymore, that Iowa State's one of the best teams in this Big 12, and that's going to be the question. But look, this team is loaded. There's no question. They have a whopping 20 starters back from last year. Brock Purdy, the quarterback, returns. We know he's good. Breece Hall should be one of the best running backs, not only in the Big 12, Connor, maybe in the entire country. He's a great running back. Having him back is huge. The offensive line loaded, lots of experience there. On defense, this is one of those teams that did step up, play solid defensively, and from all indications, defense this year could be even better than it was last year for this Iowa State team. So, again, lots of expectations now. A team that's been good for a couple of years, a great year last year. They lose to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. But now is the point spread value still going to be there? That is the question for me. So I love this Iowa State team. I wouldn't want to go under the win total. For me, the win total play is over or pass. No question about that. But from a point spread standpoint, game to game, ATS, are you going to find value this season with Iowa State? Part of me does worry you're not going to have that same point spread value we've had with this team the last few years. What do you think here, Connor? Iowa State.
Yeah, you're right. They're going to be the team, laying points, which they've never really been in before. And you talked about all the starters coming back. 20, Purdy, Hall, running back. They're pretty much loaded from the great team that was last year. But yeah, more value. We knew we're good, but they didn't they took that next step. And hey, they played Oklahoma tough, both times. It came out short. But I'm with you on the win total here at 9.5. I think it's over or pass. I think they have maybe two losses on the schedule, Oklahoma, and I mean maybe they could drop one to West Virginia or Oklahoma State. I don't know. I could see one, but I think they're going to be a borderline, top 10 team, maybe just below. They'll be right there all year. And then the big game in Iowa, and like you said, it's been a big deal with Campbell being able to recruit and get the recruits to come to Ames, Iowa. I mean, if you're a football player, you grow up in Iowa, you go to Iowa for the most part. If you want to play football. So yeah, he's done a great job, and they're bringing back a ton of kids, and I like him over. I was so high on him, but yeah, you've just lost the value of kind of catching points in a sleeper team that we were cash in on every weekend, it seemed like. So now they'll be favorite. We'll see in this role if they can cover spreads as favorite, with Purdy and this great offense and really solid defense that we loved last year.
This could be the Kansas City Chiefs of last year, Iowa State, where they could be, Kansas City was 14-2 last year straight up. But you know what their spread record was? 7-9. They were a losing point spread team. And that's the thing. Iowa State could be 10-2 straight up this year. We think they could be a double-digit win team, no question. But they could also be, 5-7 against the spread. 4, that you worry about that.
It could just be okay. Yeah. Yeah, because they're laying numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. The prices have been jacked up a little bit here now in Iowa State. So while they could be a 10-win straight up team, you might be looking at a team that's only 5-7 against the spread this year. That's definitely something that concerns you a little bit, or 4-8 against the spread, or maybe just 500, 6-6 against the spread. And if they're 500 against the spread, guess what? You're going to lose money on Iowa State because of the juice every game. So as a result, be careful. That's all I'm saying. I love the team. He's done a remarkable job. They're definitely the next best team behind Oklahoma on paper in the Big 12 this year, but be careful from a point spread standpoint, whether the value's there or not. Kansas Jayhawks. Well, there is definitely going to be point spread value with the Kansas Jayhawks this year. The question is, are they going to be good enough to cash some tickets as just incredibly big underdogs through most of their schedule? I'll say this right now. Lance Leipold was a nice hire. The stench of past head coaches, you need to get rid of it. Les Miles was a disaster, that experiment. They've had some other bad coaching hires recently as well. That didn't work out with Turner Gill years ago. I mean, go on down the list. I mean, it's just been one bad hire after another, really since Mark Mangino. That's really the last time Kansas was even competent, at football. And even then, they weren't that great when he was the head coach there a long time ago. So now they bring in Leipold, though, who's done a great job at Buffalo, and he brings his coaching staff. He brought his OC. He brought his DC from Buffalo over here. So he's got his whole – that's nice that he's got, his guys there. He's bringing some of his transfers, too, from Buffalo, especially along the lines of scrimmage. Offensive line, defensive line. Brought a lot of guys that played under Leipold at Buffalo with the Bulls, bringing them to Kansas. So those are all things that are good, positive for Kansas coming into this year. But unfortunately, there's not a damn other thing positive about this team. And it's going to take time. It's a new coaching staff still, new system. The schedule is unforgiving, obviously. And what I have to say about Kansas is, look, their win total is 1 in a lot of spots. 1.5 is what we're looking at with the Kansas win total. They'd better win that opener against the Coyotes of South Dakota on September the 3rd. And obviously, they're double-digit favorites in that game. Because other than that, at Coastal Carolina, good luck with that. Baylor, they do get Baylor at home. Baylor is probably one of the games that are actually winnable for not winnable, but compete and have maybe a shot in the dark if you force some turnovers and you get some decent offense. Duke is going to be bad. They're only 9-point underdogs. Can you believe that? Baylor and Duke win games that actually they could compete in, and yet they're still going to be huge underdogs of over a touchdown in those two games. And then Iowa State, forget it. Texas Tech, I don't think so. Oklahoma, forget it. Oklahoma State, forget it. Kansas State, no, they never beat Kansas State. Kansas State treats Kansas like their whipping boy. They always get up to pound Kansas. Texas, no. TCU, no. West Virginia, I mean, good luck finding a second win, after South Dakota. It's not a given this team gets to 2 wins this year. Because even the Baylor and the Duke games, which to me are the two that they could possibly pull off a stunner. But even then, they are just so far behind everybody else here when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to defense. The quarterback position is going to be unsettled coming into this year. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are really, really, you got to start from scratch here. It looks like Jason Bean, transfer from North Texas, is going to be the quarterback here. And look, he was a solid quarterback there for Conference USA standards, but now you're going to come over to the Big 12. It's going to be a big learning curve there. The defense was an absolute disaster area throughout the Les Miles era, not surprising. And unfortunately for Kansas coming into this year, when you look at this team, obviously still going to be one of the worst teams in FBS football this year. And their production is 106th. So, it's new faces everywhere, new coaching staff, new schemes. Like, it's definitely not a team that I'm ready, even at 1.5. Like, I can't take over. I just can't. I'm not buying into this team for sure. And I've got to feel really confident this team can get a second win on their schedule. And other than the opener against South Dakota, I don't feel overly confident that there is a second win on their schedule. So as a result, I'm not betting the win total at all. But at 1.5, it's under or pass for me. I just find it difficult that Kansas is going to find their way to more than a single victory this year. And if they don't somehow lose to South Dakota, this could be an 0-12 football team this year. You could be looking at that if you're the Jayhawks. Connor, what do you think of Kansas?
I'll be short here. Yeah, I just under. They better win that game against South Dakota. I think Lance Leopold, he's a very good coach, and I think they will get going. I mean, he did great things at Buffalo. It's going to take time. They don't have the guys. Like you said, he's brought over some guys from Buffalo, especially on the line that will help. But that defense was just bad. The whole Les Miles experience, it backed him up years. COVID, nobody wanted to play for him and that team. Guys quitting, stuff like that. It was in real shambles. You talked about it, though. If they could win that, could they pull out one more win, maybe with Duke? That's what I see with this team. I think the max here is 2 wins. If they could win 2, that's their ceiling so far this year. So I'd be kind of lean the under 1.5 as well, but I just stay away. I wouldn't don't even mess with betting the 1.5 if you don't have to, unless you're really into this. So this is just kind of a stay away. They'll be at the bottom of the conference all year.
Yeah, going to be tough sledding. Long-term higher, in terms of it being a good long-term higher, it is.
I think down the line,
but
yeah.
It's just not going to be something where you can expect huge leaps forward in year one for this Kansas team, even under a coach that's shown the ability to win everywhere he's been with Lance Leopold. Kansas State Wildcats. Next up, we've got Chris Kleiman in his 3rd season as the head coach. And look, it fell off the cliff last year, especially down the stretch for Kansas State. They got blown out, eviscerated in a lot of their games, injuries galore, COVID-19 situations that really prompted that season to just completely get away from them last year. But there's a lot of questions now. Skylar Thompson is going to be back. He's going to be healthy. He's been around this team now forever, it seems, as the quarterback. Lots of experience, but again, a little erratic as a pocket passer. Great wheels, and they always like using him as a running quarterback, but going to have to improve his accuracy throwing the football. You just can't run the football as a quarterback all the time. You got to show the ability to keep defenses honest and throw the football and be accurate doing so. He's got to improve with that. Will Howard got a lot of starts last year when Thompson went down. He's back as well as the backup. So their quarterback duo is very experienced. That's the good news. Defense has always been what has been the glue that's held K-State together. Going back to the Bill Snyder days, it was always a solid defense for Big 12 standards. But this year, there's a few more concerns. I mean, they lose a couple of key pass rushers from that defense. The secondary looks a little unsettled. They only have 6 overall returning starters on the defensive side of the football coming into this year. Their production ranking is only 70th in the country. That bad 5-game losing streak to end the year this year. I just have a lot of question marks about Kansas State. And this was a team I'd be looking to bet on. In Bill Snyder, I gave Chris Kleiman the benefit of the doubt. Again, they're going to be a lot healthier. That's going to help. But I don't know. When you look at this schedule, too, the Stanford game, that's a toss-up. Southern Illinois, they should win. They are favored against Nevada, but they could absolutely lose that game. That Nevada
Possibly.
team is
Yep.
going to be really good, and we'll get to them when we do the non-Power 5 conferences. Nevada is going to be a damn good football team this year. So Kansas State, even at home playing Nevada September 18th, they better be ready to play good football because Jay Norvell and that Nevada team are coming, and they're going to be good this year. Carson Strong at quarterback. Go on down the list. That is a good football team, both sides of the ball. That's a tough game for K-State. Then they have the two Oklahomas, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. The good news is they faced Iowa State, but they get the bye. So at least that's going to give them a puncher's chance against a very good Iowa State team. Then they have Texas Tech, TCU. They'll beat Kansas, obviously. West Virginia, Baylor, Texas. Like right now, it looks like they could be favored in just 3 games this year, or 4 at the most. And even that might be a stretch, which is why to me it's a stretch that this team's going to go over their win total. At this number, I could only look to the under. I always think of K-State as a team I'd like to back in certain spots, but man, I got my head caved in taking them a couple of times last year once things started to fall apart. And I'm going to need to see some progress and some improvement from Kansas State football early in the year before I'm rushing to back them in the month of September. Connor, your thoughts here on K-State?
Yeah, I always like to back, K-State, especially as dogs. They always seem to come through for years and years and years. Last year it was crazy, the good start and then just the fall apart. I know Thompson went down, but the defense got gashed, like you're talking about. That's the problem I have here. Thompson's back. The running back, Deuce Vaughn's good. They're both those guys, Thompson and Vaughn. I think they'll move the ball. It's just I don't know how much they're going to stop on defense. They lost some guys. I mean, they got that Iowa transfer, Julius Brents. I don't know if he'll help at corner. I think they would. I think they win the Southern Illinois. Maybe Texas Tech. Their schedule's tough. I think they're a 4-win team, so I lean towards the under 5.5 here. Maybe they could be better than I am. I just have a bad taste in my mouth from kind of because I lost. I remember once or twice, and then I stayed off, and yeah, they just got killed at the end of the year. So I kind of want to wait on this team and see how they come out of the gates, and maybe they come out strong. Skylar Thompson's healthy. We know he can move the ball around, but it's a team I'm going to be cautious of. Usually I'd back right away, and maybe here we will though. When later on in the year, maybe they're not great, but them catching 2 touchdowns, at home or in another place, that could be good because they can move the ball. But I got to see their defense get better. So, but I'll lean under here for the under 5.5, just a bit.
All right, Oklahoma Sooners next up. We've got obviously there are 11 wins is where their win total is right now. It's just a question of do they go 11-1 or 12-0 in most people's minds. They certainly have the potential to run the table. There's no question. Look, last year, what did this team average? Over 40 points per game, explosive offense. They've got most of their O-line back. Spencer Rattler, who's a Heisman Trophy candidate this year, back at quarterback. Kennedy Brooks, terrific running back for the Sooners. Lots of weapons at wide receiver. And I think we need to talk about the defense. That's where Oklahoma made their improvement last year. For years under Lincoln Riley, this offense has had to carry a horseshit, underachieving, pathetic at times defense. Not anymore. Oklahoma's defense last year, 23.9 points per game, 34th in the country. They improved so much in all of their categories: rush yards per game allowed, passing yards per game, and per attempt. I mean, they got better everywhere across the board in all their defensive categories. You got to give their DC, Alex Grinch, a lot of credit. He was a good hire. I mean, that guy did good work at Missouri, at Washington State, and now he came over to Oklahoma, and it took him a year. But then last year, you saw that defense improve, and that defense is absolutely outstanding on paper coming into this year in terms of what they've got back. It should be a defense that is every bit as good, if not better, this year. So this, for the first time in Lincoln Riley's tenure, go back to when Jalen Hurts was the quarterback here. Baker Mayfield was the quarterback here. So many times the offense had to carry that defense, and they had to win games 38-35 or 42-35, something like that. Not anymore. They've got the loaded offense, and now they've got a defense that can flat out get pressure on quarterbacks, cover receivers down the field, and that is not something that we have been able to say about Oklahoma in years. They're rightfully the favorites to win the Big 12. They're going to be tough to beat. The question is, are they going to be tough to beat against the spread on a weekly basis? Because you're just not going to get too many point spread bargains. The question is, are they an Alabama or a Clemson, right? Are they so good that they still beat the point spread with this loaded team on both sides of the football? That ends up being the ultimate question. Obviously, I'm passing on the win total. I think it's right in the good number. I think it's just a question of, do they lose a game or do they go undefeated? Because one loss is probably all they're going to suffer, unless, of course, injuries and all kinds of COVID situations arise. But you can't, bet based on what ifs and you can't just bet based on that, on what ifs or conjecture. You got to see it with your own two eyes. And if this team stays healthy, it's going to be difficult to see them losing more than just one game this year. Connor, what do you think here, Oklahoma Sooners?
I mean, they're loaded. They're loaded on offense. They're loaded on defense. The big question, they're scheduled too, and let's just look at the win total real quick. They do. I think the one loss is there. Maybe it's at Bedlam, Oklahoma State. I don't know, but they have an easy schedule. I mean, Tulane, Western Carolina, Nebraska, West Virginia is always tough for them. TCU, Texas, that's always. But I think they should handle Texas, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa, and then Iowa State. I don't think they have a tough schedule really at all. That's a one loss, but you never know. We always have high hopes. I think this is a little bit better Oklahoma team, but it seems like they've lost two kind of regularly the last few years. They always kind of lose one lately, maybe to Texas Tech or something like that. One they shouldn't. But this team's a little bit different. I think that they're loaded defensively that they haven't been before. But I think they get through the Big 12 here. I just want to see them. Can that defense step up, like you just talked about at the end, against Bama, against Clemson? Can they make stops in the big games when we get to the Final Four, the championship game? So that'd be great if they can, because that's all they lacked. They could score a bit, but they would just get shredded by a Bama or a Clemson. They would just, and it's partly the Big 12. They play that schedule and would give up a ton of points and be in those, like you said, 41-38 shootouts. It'd be tough, but definitely solid team. They're a top 3 or 4 team all year, and I think they lose one. I wouldn't take the over 11. I think at worst it pushes. It's 11 at most places. So Sooners definitely the top of the conference here.
We go from one Oklahoma team to the other. Oklahoma State Cowboys down in Stillwater with Mike Gundy and company. 8 is their win total. 7.5, 8, depending on where you look. I have already bet Oklahoma State over their win total. This was one of the first futures bets I made in the offseason in college football. I actually got it when it was 7 minus 150 with their win total. And I figured, wait a minute, 7 wins for this team? You got to be kidding me in terms of their win total. And I bet the over 7 right away. And now it's 7.5. And most of the 7.5s are gone. I think the prevailing number is 8 now with the win total for Oklahoma State. So it's taken a lot of over support. And I agree with it. Look, this team was very good defensively last year. And this is like Oklahoma a little bit, where Oklahoma State's had some bad defenses in Mike Gundy's time. Last year, they had a good defense. Last year, it was actually the offense that was the problem. The O-line struggled. Spencer Sanders couldn't stay healthy. Chuba Hubbard had injury issues. But now you get Spencer Sanders back. And don't look now, but they are absolutely gushing in camp, spring game, and now so far in the August camp about Spencer Sanders looking a lot better, a lot sharper, more accurate with the football, and really looking to take that big stride in his career as a college football starting quarterback. So good reports coming out of Stillwater about him improving. The O-line has got a lot of returning talent back, which is a good sign. They do have running backs and receivers that I think can fill the void. I know they lose Tylan Wallace and Chuba from last year, but they've got more than enough weapons, and they think they're going to be fine at the skill position group on offense. The defense should be really, really solid. They bring back 8 starters from a defense that was one of the better defenses the Cowboys have had in recent years. That's definitely a good sign. When you look at the schedule, Missouri State, Tulsa, at Boise State, Kansas State, Baylor. I don't know, Connor. That looks like a 5-0 start to me for Oklahoma State. I think they could win all of those games. At Texas is winnable because I've still got some questions about Texas. At Iowa State would be tough. Kansas, obviously, they'd win. At West Virginia, it's on the road, but they're slight favorite, and I think they're further ahead than West Virginia right now. TCU's a game at home they can definitely win. Texas Tech on the road. Oklahoma, of course, Bedlam would be tough, but guess what? Mike Gundy's pulled the odd upset or two over Oklahoma in the past.
Oh, yeah.
You could never completely rule that out. So I think this is a bare minimum 8-win football team. So if you find 7.5, I love the win total over. If you get that number, I'd still endorse it at 8 because I think 8's the minimum, the floor for Oklahoma State this year. I even think they could hit 9 wins if things really go right. But if you can get the 7.5, I really, really like that over win total. 8, I'm a little more lukewarm on it, but this is definitely a bet on team for me. ATS wise, this is a team I think I'm going to be looking to cash some tickets with this year. The defense is good. I'm hearing great things about Spencer Sanders, which means that offense should be much improved from where it was a year ago. So definitely a buy sign for me on the Oklahoma State Cowboys in 2021. Connor, what do you think of Okie State?
Yeah, I always like Oklahoma State. It's just something about Gundy. He just seems to win 7 to 9 games. I mean, when they're their worst teams, they go 6-6, which had been a few years. They've gone 6-6 under his tenure. And he usually can get a lot out of his players that you think they weren't, as great. I think Sanders is solid at quarterback. I'm most of them is the defense, because I was shocked how they played kind of low scoring games. Obviously last year, COVID year, a little different. And all these teams played certain amount of games. Some played 2 or 3 and others played, the 10. But that defense was solid. And like you said, they're bringing 8 guys back. I think they'll be good. And I want to see, though, that they kind of get back to that defense in those lower scoring, or because Mike Gundy was always, high scoring games with Oklahoma State. But I think they'll be fine. He's done well recruiting. I think they're right there. I think they're 7 to 9. So I'd lean over. I haven't bet it, but I like your bet. Because at the worst, I see 6-6 looking at the schedule at the worst. And I think they're better, a little bit better than that. So I think they're an 8-4, 9-3 football team.
I'm tempted by the 25 to 1. I mean, I don't think anyone but Oklahoma and maybe Iowa State is winning this conference, but I'm tempted by that price because, look, they've got Oklahoma State behind Texas and TCU in the Big 12 conference odds, and I don't agree with that. I think Oklahoma State could be better than TCU. I think Oklahoma State could be better than Texas this year. Sometimes I'm more than happy to disagree when I don't think something is right in terms of what the odds makers have put out there. And to me, I think Oklahoma State's better than Texas. They should be the third favorite in this conference behind Oklahoma and Iowa State in my mind. So that's why I think there's value. Oklahoma State point spread wise this year, and why I like them over their win total as well. Next up, we've got the TCU Horn Frogs. Gary Patterson, who's been here now for over 2 decades. Hard to believe he's been there that long already. Just an institution there in Fort Worth, Texas, with this program. Going to be interesting to see how this team goes. I saw a lot of progress last year from Max Duggan, the quarterback here for TCU. He's a guy that can run. His passing ability got better, the last bit of last year, or the second half of last year. So that's good news for TCU coming into this year. Max Duggan took strides forward. We'll see how it goes here. Last year, they were denied going to the postseason because of their COVID-19 issues. So that leaves a little fire in this team to try to, bounce back a little bit. We'll see. I think the offense will definitely be a little bit better. We'll see how it goes on the defensive side of the football. TCU defensively has not been as good the last year or two. They've struggled a little bit more to get stops on the defensive side of the football. They'll be looking to improve a little bit on that side of it this year. They do have, I like that, by the way, the offense, 9 starters back, Max Duggan back, who had progressed and improved last year. And the defense, when you look position by position through this defensive line, linebackers, secondary, on paper, they look better defensively than they were last year. The question is how many strides forward can they make here defensively? Going to be the question mark. The win total for TCU right now, currently in that 7.5 to 8 ballpark range at the moment in terms of their win total. And when you look at it, I think it's going to be close to that. I like Oklahoma State more over this 7.5, 8 range win total than TCU because when you look at the schedule, they had at Oklahoma State, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, a lot of the better teams that they have to play in the Big 12 on TCU's schedule, they got to go on the road to play those teams. And I think that is what could be the difference. And that's why I think Oklahoma State got a little bit better, a better hand, if you will, dealt to them in terms of the schedule than TCU. I think TCU, again, a team that I think could be profitable point spread wise, make you some money in certain spots. But from a win total perspective, no, I like the Okie State win total over this number a little bit more than TCU. Connor, what do you think here? TCU Horn Frogs.
Yeah, this one's interesting because I've heard a lot of people kind of rumbling they think TCU's really good. This is one of Patterson's better teams, like you said, bringing back 9 starters, and Max Dugan, who played well at times. I kind of saw him as last year when they played better down the stretch. A lot of tight games. I think they're going to be in close games this year, so I think there could be value with them if they're catching some points, maybe at home or even on the road, maybe as dogs. I find their schedule, I land about 5 wins. I mean, they have Duquesne. Can they beat Cal, SMU, and West Virginia, Oklahoma State? They'll beat Kansas. Then how about these ones? I mean, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, K-State, maybe a Baylor win, Iowa State a loss. So I lean under here. I think at 7.5, at a lot of places you could find maybe an 8, like the under 7.5 plus 110. I'm looking at just right now. I lean under, but I could see them being in such close games that I could see like 6-6, 5-7, or maybe they could be 9-3 and kind of shock me, and play well. But I lean under. I just haven't seen enough the last few years. But I'm interested to see them. I think they're kind of like the wild card in this division a little bit. How they're going to be.
All right,
conference, not division.
Yeah,
I mean the conference.
All right, Texas Longhorns, Steve Sarkisian taking over from Tom Herman, the Tom Herman era, and just ended up being a disappointment. I think a lot of people expected more from Texas under Tom Herman. I mean, they had a couple good years, but they had never had that year. And maybe it's time. This is like Michigan all over again. For Texas Longhorns fans to admit it's not our birthright to be a national championship contender every year. Those days are done. You're just hoping for an upper echelon Big 12 season, maybe get a nice bowl game, maybe get a New Year's Six bowl game. But this nonsense that we should be playing for national championships every year, you're not recruiting as well. It's not Mac Brown in the heyday when you were getting Vince Young and coming here, and having that chance to win national championships. Manage your expectations. It's not that same program anymore, this Texas Longhorns team. So with that said, look, Steve Sarkisian getting another head coaching chance. It's been up and down for him as a head coach. He did do a great job as an OC with Nick Saban at Alabama. Give him a lot of credit. Did a great job. But some guys, they're just, better as OC. He's been great as an OC in college football. Really good, Sarkisian. But the head coach, can he make that work? Still a question mark. Of course, not only did they say goodbye to Tom Herman, who got dismissed, Sam Ehlinger, who's been the quarterback here forever, finally moving on to the NFL, which means a brand new starting quarterback for the first time in years here with Texas. And it looks like the battle is still raging and ongoing in August camp between the sophomore Casey Thompson, who, if you'll remember, played really well in the bowl game blowout win over Colorado last year in the Alamo Bowl. He played in that game. They scored 55-some points in that. 55 points they scored in that game. Texas, he played very well. He looks like he'll be fine. He looks like he'll be a good quarterback for this program, but he has not played so much better in camp than Hudson Card, who is the other quarterback he's battling with right now, that he has not won the starting job yet. So that's why I'm a little bit, wait a minute. These teams that now go basically right down to the wire with their starting quarterback, I always have the doubts that once you get to that point, whether those quarterbacks, whoever it ends up being as the starter, whether they're going to be good right away. When it's taken this long for some of these coaches to determine their starting quarterback, I get questions about whether they're ready and whether they're going to be good right away starting in week 1. So keep an eye on that. Sarkisian hasn't named his starter yet. Bijan Robinson back at the running back spot should be very good. What I like, though, about the Texas team is the defense, which, again, has been a little bit of an issue for them in recent years. Their secondary is very good, but there's a lot of question marks elsewhere. The front seven, they've recruited well there, but there's a lot of replacements that are going to have to be made. They lost some returning or players that were there last year and now are gone. So getting a pass rush, stopping the run, going up against some of these good Big 12 offensive lines that they're going to be dealing with this year. There's some questions there because that's the part of the defense that's a little suspect and a little thin coming into the season. I like the secondary, but up front, they're a little thin on defense. So that worries me a bit. Like I said, with TCU, Texas, and Oklahoma State, you could throw them all into a bucket, throw them all into a bag, and then I think you could come out with any one of them as who's going to be the best team, the best of those three teams behind Oklahoma and Iowa State, Texas, TCU, and Oklahoma State. I think it's going to be Oklahoma State. But I'm not saying Texas can't have a good season. I'm not saying TCU can't have a good season. They could. I just think that's going to take some time for Texas. I'm not liking that he's a little, hesitant to name a starter, and we're now just less than a couple weeks away from the season. That tells me that nobody's played good enough yet in camp to grasp the job, to take command of the starting quarterback job, and I always get concerned about that. So Texas is a wait-and-see team for me, really, in terms of bet on, bet against. It's Texas, right? And I'll say this right now, because of the quarterback uncertainty, because I am worried about that D-line a little bit, and because of the new coaching staff, you're going to have new schemes and all that, I'm putting Texas on upset alert against UL Lafayette in their first game of the year. We've seen Texas spit the bit in these opening games in years past, and they have a difficult, tough opponent out of the non-Power 5 waltzing into Austin, Texas on September the 4th. That Lafayette team, the Ragin' Cajuns, are no joke this year, just like they were last year. And we saw UL Lafayette go into Iowa State and beat the Cyclones, a damn good Cyclones team last year in week 1 on the road. Dangerous first game for Texas. So keep an eye on that. Connor, what are your thoughts here on the Texas Longhorns?
For that, I think that game's big because I think they kind of have a decent schedule. Baylor, Kansas. Let's see, they do have Arkansas. That'll be a good one. West Virginia. Those are kind of toss-ups. But at 8 wins, I think this is an under team. Like you said, it's too much uncertainty. Like if he went 9-3, it would be great. I mean, that would be phenomenal, I think. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're 6-6, 7-5 at best. The coaching staff hasn't had the time. It's the whole thing. I just see some early season troubles. So like you're right, maybe early that first like against Lafayette they could lose. So I kind of like this under 8. I think they got the name, the prestige, Texas. So they got the 8 wins. I think they're an under team. I think they're going to go 6-6, 7-5 at best this year. So I'd be on the under train. And hey, who knows? It could be even worse. I don't like that for these big schools, but it could be bad early before Sarkisian gets things going and they start playing better.
Yeah, definitely. It's a wait and see for Texas. And like I say, they've got even the first 2 games in Arkansas. We'll get to them in the SEC.
Right.
That is a hard-nosed, feisty, tough-minded team. Yep. And we saw it last year. Competitive as all get out. And that Arkansas game is no gimme either.
Nope.
For this Texas team the week after they play the Cajuns. So keep that in mind. Interesting to see. You're not getting an easy non-conference slate early in the year if you're Texas. So, but after that, again, the schedule gets a little bit more manageable. But good tests right off the hop for Texas. Texas Tech now, the Red Raiders next up. Matt Wells, 3rd year as head coach. He brings back Sonny Cumbie as the offensive coordinator here with this group. A lot of people now starting to get excited a little bit about Texas Tech. We'll have to wait and see. I'm a little bit more hesitant on this team, but because it obviously has been a tough run of it for Wells here so far since he's taken over with Texas Tech. To be honest, it's been tough for this program since Patrick Mahomes played there. That's where the issues have been. But look, when you look at this team, they bring in Oregon transfer Tyler Shuck at quarterback. We definitely saw him a lot last year for the Ducks. Going to be interesting to see how it goes for him here now with this Texas Tech team. We'll see if and then the offense could be a decent fit if Shuck plays well. Sonny Cumbie, we know, fast-paced, air raid type of offense. That's the system, up-tempo. That's what you get under him. So they're going to that's what the word is. They're going to look to speed it up. And look, give Matt Wells credit. He parted ways with David Yost, his former offensive coordinator, who was his offensive coordinator going back to when he coached at Utah State before he got the Tech job. So give him credit. He recognized, hey, the offense is going backward, not forward. and we got to do something to correct it. He brings in Cumbie, respected OC, air raid, up-tempo offense. They shuck the transfer from Oregon, who showed you, I think, glimpses of pretty good play last year. It wasn't always consistent for him, but he showed you he's got potential, can move around. He can add a little bit of a dual threat component as well. He's not a statue in the pocket, solid arm. So we'll see how it goes here for him with this team. The defense, of course, the good news is I think this could actually be a defense that's capable for Texas Tech for the first time in a very long time. They actually made strides defensively last year. We think this could be one of his I think this could be Matt Wells' best team. Now, it's only his third year, but to me on paper, this defense is better. I like a lot of the things I'm seeing with it. The question is, can we see it translate the potential this defense has on paper? D-line, about as steady as it's been in a long time. Secondary could be a big improvement there, but can it mesh and come together on the field? Because we know Texas Tech defense has not been their forte, but on paper, this defense should be improved with the starters. They have 8 starters back on defense, which is a good thing. Look, pressure's on Matt Wells. It's been a tough first 2 years, but this could be not saying for sure, because I got to see it before I believe it. I know there's others, including Connor, that might be higher on Texas Tech than me, but I got to see it before I believe it. But on paper, this could be one of the better Texas Tech teams in a few years, especially on defense. So it's a wait and see for me. I'm neutral on the win total. I'm kind of neutral in terms of do I want to bet on or bet against Texas Tech weekly in terms of ATS. Just a wait and see team for me. Maybe an under team if the defense is going to be as good as we think it is this year, because you're going to get high totals in Texas Tech games as usual. Maybe there's going to be some opportunities to bet these high game totals for Texas Tech under if this defense does indeed make that significant potential improvement that some people think they might this season. Connor, what do you think here? Texas Tech?
Yeah, I'm kind of high on them. I just thought at 4.5 wins. A lot of places have moved it now to 5.5 I've seen, but I got it a while back at 4.5. I thought they have a pretty easy schedule to start out. It's like Stephen F. Austin, FIU. They play Kansas. I think they win that. I think they go 3-0, 4-0, and I think they pull an upset or two. Whether it's West Virginia, I think they could beat K-State or TCU, and I think Tyler, the transfer Oregon, is going to do well. Henry Columbi, that guy, their backup, score points, could move the ball at least. And the big key you talked about is this defense. I don't know if it's got 8 guys, they're back. At times played well, at times got gashed, would give up a ton of points. So I want to see it to believe it. But I think they could score some points. I think they'll be in games. And I just think how their schedule sets up, I think for sure they win 4. And I think there's about 3 or 4 other toss-ups. So I think they get 5 wins. I'd get the 4.5. I wouldn't have probably endorsed it at 5.5, but I got the 4.5, 3 weeks ago or so, or longer than that. I jumped on it right away. I think they get 5 wins this year. I think they're more of a 6-6 team, at least 5-7, and at least cash my ticket on the over Texas Tech.
All right, final team in the Big 12, the West Virginia Mountaineers. Neil Brown, third year as head coach, got the job after a great run at Troy there with that program as the OC there, I should say. And then we'll see now third year as the head coach here with this West Virginia team. Will they make strides forwards? That's the question. I mean, now this is the year you would expect West Virginia maybe to step up. This is a weird situation for me here where in terms of their win total, I'm not sure they're going to go over it, but this could be a team that could be a squad you can make money with, because this is down the pecking order a little bit in this Big 12 conference. They bring back 9 starters on offense, 7 on defense. Unfortunately, they're only the one thing that backs me off a little. I think West Virginia could offer some bet on potential, CMAC, but 103rd in production returning, 103rd in experience returning in the country. That's going to be the challenge. A lot of new faces here, but there is some. Neil Brown's a good offensive mind. We'll see if he can keep it progressing here. The offense was definitely spotty. That's the word to describe it last year. Spotty offense. Jarrett Dagey is back, the senior quarterback. Let's see if he can take another stride forward for this team. Again, good moments last year, but a lot of bad throws, bad decisions. He chucked the ball in double coverage too much. Drove me nuts, especially when I bet on West Virginia. So he's got to iron out those issues, no doubt about that. But when you look at this West Virginia team, the defense was really good last year, and the secondary, was terrific last year. It was the best part of this defense, but it's a little bit of a revamped secondary. Much of their production and much of their starters in that secondary last year are gone. You're going to have to face some pretty good offenses, pretty good quarterbacks in this conference. I think so it's a wait and see for me. I initially thought like year 3 for a guy that I think is a good head coach and is a good mind in football, I usually think of as a bet on, but I want to see how they come out of the gate. I still lean that they could be a bet on team, point spread value in spots. I think from their game totals perspective, Connor, last year, they were a big under team, right? Good defense, couldn't move the football consistently. But now it's year 3 for an offensive-minded head coach. Daggy, I think, will be better. The O-line should be decent. Weapons there's still some decent weapons there. And I think the defense is going to take, which was so good last year, is going to take a step back this year. So I think over the total, they kind of changed their spots a little bit this year, West Virginia. They were an under the total team in a lot of their games last year. I think you're going to be able to cash some overs with them this season in 2021. Connor, what are your thoughts here? West Virginia.
West Virginia is one of the most kind of interesting up in the air I want to see. And I think their schedule, like Maryland, Kansas, they have Long Island, like they have some easy wins, I think, but their offense was a struggle to watch. Will it be better? Like you talked about, Neil Brown, that's what he is, offensive guy. And you could count on that defense, but they lost a lot. Like you talked about, they're way down on production. I don't know if that defense will be as good. It's always tough to go to Morgantown and win. So they always have at home, but it was to watch some of their games and offense try to score there at the end of the year. It was really, really rough. So, I mean, I could see this team, if their offense moves well and their defense, they could win 8 games. And I do like their schedule, but I see them more of a 6-win team, 5 or 6. And I think they're right at that number. Most places are 6.5. I'm just very interested to see what goes on here with West Virginia this year.
Yeah, they only averaged 23 points per game on offense last year, and they only gave up 21. That's really good numbers.
That is good.
For Big 12, 21 points per game allowed. That defensive number is going to go up in terms of points per game this year, definitely. They're going to give up closer to, I think, 28-30 this year. It could be that much of a fall. But I think the offense could be improved, and that's why keep an eye on their totals, West Virginia. Could be a team that cashes some overs game total-wise this year. We'll have to wait and see. That is your look at the Big 12. We've gotten through the entire conference. We appreciate all you tuning in. We will continue all week long going through every college football conference from a betting perspective, getting you ready for the 2021 season. Hit the like button, share these videos, give us some love.
Yes.
We continue to get through every video here to get you ready for the college football season, every conference throughout the rest of the week. For Conor Mac, I'm Ian Cameron. Thanks for watching this college football